Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina Woodruff from Core Connection. And this week we are going to get into adding to the family. And before we do that, I have this week's parenting moment. And so this is a shift that I made a couple of years ago now. So I realized that I was judging the productivity of my day based on how much I got done around the house. Oh, did I get enough cleaning done? Right. And also keep in mind, I am a stay-at-home mom. That is my job. And so obviously, in the natural division of labor, that includes caring for the kids, cooking, cleaning, all those things, right? That's mine and Curtis's division of labor. And so that's how I was judging my day for a long time. And then it occurred to me that I needed to shift my perspective rather than focusing on how much housework am I getting done on my to-do list is how much time am I spending with my kids. And as I've started doing this podcast with you guys and we've kind of focused on connection, now my focus is, and that's not to say that it's still not important to me that I get some things done, right? That I have to do things to run the house. But I've shifted to how much connection am I getting with my family? Am I connecting with my kids? Am I spending time with them rather than just, did I get all these things checked off my to-do list? Because my kids are not a to-do list. They should be the priority. And we typically tend to avoid religion, but there was a quote that comes from our church that I think is very applicable in a non-secular setting. Never let something to be done take precedent over someone to be loved. So, it's okay for me to put aside my to-do list and focus on my children, focus on my family, husband included, right? Because we've talked about in the past that the marital relationship between mom and dad is actually really, really important to kids and it provides them with security. And so I've started to try to shift my focus of, am I connecting rather than judging my day based off of how many things I was able to get done. It's how much did I connect with my kids and how much did I connect with my family?
I love it. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's a beautiful reminder because we do get caught up in the things that need to get done, but such a blessing to be able to have these kids and to have that stewardship over them, to be able to love them. So keep that in our focus, as that's our ultimate goal as a parent.
Yeah, when they grow up, they're not going to care if the dishes were always done. It's not going to make a difference to them. But what will make a difference is mom spending time with me, right? And not that they're going to necessarily look at it that way, but I can be cultivating a relationship with them that will better enable me to connect with them as they move into the teenage and adult years. Because that's going to matter more than, do I have a spotless house? Which, no, I don't. I'm not a spotless house cleaner, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I have 3 kids, and my house is often a mess. But my kids are loved, and they're involved. And so, I feel like we have a happy house, a happy life.
I think it's beautiful.
Okay. All right. So adding to the family, this topic, as many do, stem from real life things going on in our lives. Enter, I'm about to have a baby. And so I thought it would be good to just kind of discuss that because this is something that I went through. I was 10 years old when my youngest brother was born. I have a 12-year-old about to have a baby. And I know this is something you guys have also experienced in your family dynamics of a teen and a newborn, or adolescent and newborn. And it can create an interesting dynamic. And so I thought it would be good to just kind of talk about how you navigate that. And this also can kind of apply to young kids a little bit as well. But I don't know, I feel like when they're younger.
It definitely applies to young kids.
Sure, yeah. But I think our main focus is going to be on teens, right? And helping a teen adjust to a new baby is much different than helping the toddler. Because I think the biggest thing for me with the toddler is, don't let the toddler smother the baby to death. It's is kind of the main thing. But with teens, it can be a little bit more complicated than that, right? So tell me your guys' experience with this. What was this like for you as you guys, brought beautiful new life into the world while trying to raise teenagers?
Well, first, I think it's good to also point out that adding to the family could be adoption or blending families. So, any kind of dynamic change in the family with adding more people to the family can be both exciting and challenging, right?
Yes.
But to answer your question, it's funny when you say that. My first thought is trying to stay up all night for my teenage daughter to come home while having a newborn baby, or sitting on the couch trying to nurse my baby while her teenage boyfriend would want to come hang out. And I just remember thinking like, okay, this is fun. This is like two different worlds, two different times in my life. And like thinking as a young mom, that was hard, right? Like you said, with a toddler and keeping up with their schedule and being sleep deprived. But I don't know. I feel like it was a different sleep deprived. I was up already with the baby. So I guess staying up for her to come home from dates. I don't know. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. I think for us too, like we didn't experience the negative from having more children with our teens, because they were always, at least to us, they were always excited, to have an addition to the family. And that's not always the case for some folks. We understand that. Yeah. We did have our son was incredibly unhappy with one pregnancy, but he was like 5 or 6 or 7. I don't remember. He was just unhappy about the gender. He wanted a brother and not another girl in the family. We're a pretty girl heavy family. So we kind of had to navigate that, but it was kind of short lived, as it normally would be with younger folks. But there's definitely that struggle. I remember dropping our oldest off at college and recognizing that, oh man, we have a very young toddler in diapers and our oldest child in college, and we have everything in between, every stage of life in between. And so there was a lot of being pulled different ways as parents, and shifting our parenting from, focusing on building teenage relationships to teaching a toddler how to read or say words or whatever it is. And so it definitely can be unique and challenging. And if there's a big gap, that can even be more difficult for some folks. And like Selina said, when we start blending families, we introduce like an adoption or blended family through marriage or whatever happens. And now, man, we just added a whole slew of challenges and struggles that we could probably spend a couple of weeks talking about here. And so I think we're going to get into this throughout our podcast today, and you're always going to hear us say this, the answer is connection. We got to build the connections with our children and help them build that with one another, with their siblings. And going through that process can be challenging and painful, but also deeply rewarding.
I think of a funny story. First, let us explain, we have a 17-year gap from our oldest to our youngest. So there's a lot in between. So we had taken our daughter to college, and I remember being at the grocery store with our baby and someone coming to me and be like, you really need to enjoy this. It just goes so fast. And I'm thinking, what, like dropping a kid off at college? I mean, they had no idea because they didn't know my oldest, that I just dropped her off. But it did open my eyes to understanding, because I was experiencing that. I did know. I knew how fast it went. I was already experiencing that, so I knew how fast it did go. But I think maybe helping our kids with the excitement and having them involved with the new baby, that's the only experience we have. We haven't had adoption or blended families, but just the excitement throughout the pregnancy and talking about it and letting them like pick clothes for the kid, or they wanted to come to the ultrasound, just feeling like they were a part of it. And when the baby's born, helping to take care of it. Maybe not all siblings want to do that, but our kids always wanted to have a part in that. So finding things that they could do to help feel like it was a part of them and they could be a part of the excitement. But I think maybe we need to have our older kids on to say differently, but I feel like they didn't struggle with feeling like they weren't getting the attention. I don't know. I'd have to think. I guess I should have thought better about how I maybe helped that, or maybe it was just an expectation that they already felt that they didn't feel like they were missing out on that attention. But maybe I need to ask my oldest. Maybe she felt like she missed out on some of the attention when others were born.
Well, I like what you said, Selina, and having them be involved, because I feel like that's kind of an important key. This is a great time for family meetings, right?
Yep.
If we're looking at considering adoption or blending a family, that impacts everybody, and children don't have a say in that. I get that. I understand that this is a decision made between mom and dad, or, depending on, like, if we're going to get remarried or something like that. It's not necessarily a decision for children to make, but it's certainly something that we should get their input on. So family meetings, explaining what might be happening, what we're considering, and then getting feedback and helping to understand where our kids are at. We actually considered adoption once upon a time, and we went through the process of getting approved, and it's pretty in-depth. Our kids were aware of what was happening, and they were helpful throughout the process and involved, and I think that helps. And we didn't end up adopting, which was fine. That option of having family meetings, having those conversations, and when we have the connection with our kids, then we can kind of feel out what they're experiencing and help walk them through that. For me, that's probably the biggest key. And they may not be happy about some of the decisions we make. If mom and dad decide to have another child, that's between mom and dad. It's not really the child's business, the other children's business. That's the decision mom and dad are making. But it can be a good opportunity to build connection through, like, what are you experiencing from this? What are your fears about it? What are you excited about? Those kinds of conversations can be helpful.
And also giving them a safe place to be less okay with it, right? And just and letting them voice their concerns and letting them talk about why they're not excited about it, or why they think this is not a good idea. And not reacting negatively to that, or at least trying to mitigate your negative reaction to that, because I as Jeremiah said, it's not their decision. It's right, this is a decision between mom and dad, but that doesn't mean that they might not have big feelings about it and be frustrated or be mad about it, or like, why are you doing this? Because for whatever reason, maybe they are worried, like, oh, we struggle enough financially as it is. Why are you adding another family to make it even harder financially, right? So I think it's okay to give kids a safe space to feel that and to express that, and you can validate that even. And it doesn't mean you're not excited or happy with your decision. It just means that you're giving your kid a safe place to express their discomfort or their unhappiness with the idea.
Well, I think you used a key word in there, Liz, and that was validate what they're experiencing.
Yes.
We can validate without agreeing. Hopefully, each of us as parents can see the concern, whatever the concern is, if we're going to have another baby, and the time and financial toll that has on the family, the impact it's going to have. If we're going to blend a family, that's a big one. And so we can have space there to validate and say, yeah, man, I get where you're coming from. I get your concern, and this is the direction we're going to go. And then reassure. We might need a lot of reassurance, right? That you're important and that you have a valuable role. And sometimes just having the conversation helps them see that their place in the family still exists and it's not changing. So
right.
the validation could be really, really important for teens as we, navigate those waters of change within our families.
Well, if we are focusing on connection and that's already a part of our family or part of our routine or part of our relationship, it's going to come real natural to have those conversations and have that time and continue to have that time. I guess I would caution to make sure that you do continue to have that time, even when you get so involved with taking care of a new baby or a new person into the family and focusing all that attention on them. Make sure that you are keeping up on those connections and those relationships and whatever that looks like for you. If you have time set aside or dates or things you do with them one-on-one, so that you can have those opportunities to ask them, like, hey, how are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Is this hard for you? Or how can I help you with this adjustment? Then it's going to help for them to build that trust throughout the process, to be able to know that they can express those feelings of what they're experiencing.
Yeah, I remember when we were pregnant with our third child, which was a boy. We had two girls, our two oldest girls, and there was some current concern from them. I think they came to Selena and kind of asked her, like, well, does that mean Dad's not going to love us anymore because he's going to have a boy? And I realized that they are very young. They weren't teenagers, but
Right.
Children perceive things so much differently than we do as adults. And so having that connection there that Selena's talking about and validating what they're experiencing just gives that opportunity to better explain and understand the process and the changes that are coming and how we're going to navigate that and stay together and stay strong as a family.
It's funny. I'm thinking of our oldest, and she was involved in volleyball and tennis. And I would pack up all those kids and I would bring the car seat and the babies. And I think back now and I'm thinking, that was crazy. What was I even thinking? I had like a valid excuse to be like, and sometimes I wonder if it embarrassed her, like, here's my mom packing in all these kids to come watch my game or whatever. But I don't know. It just came to me that, you know what? Maybe that was helpful in the process for her to feel like she still mattered and what she had going on mattered. And I wasn't too overwhelmed with taking care of the other littles, that I made her important in what she had going on in her life was just as important for me to be there as it was for the little kids. So I don't know, parent win on that one for me, I guess, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
That's never been talked about or expressed, but I don't know. That just came to me, that just maybe just still be involved and still support and be there, even though it's hard because you're overwhelmed,
Yeah.
you're tired, you have no sleep. And like, who wants to drag a 2-year-old screaming child and the newborn to go watch the tennis game, right? But we just would do it and we'd make it happen because she was just as important what she had going on as what everybody else had going on too.
Mm-hmm. Which is fantastic for your family. And, I think it's also okay to recognize maybe that doesn't work for every family dynamic, right? So, I'm thinking of, maybe you have a baby born in the winter and your kid is doing an indoor sport. Maybe you don't want to take your newborn to the indoor, right, to this indoor sport. Okay, so, if you can make it work, oh, that's fantastic. But if it's not going to work for your dynamic, that's okay. There's other ways that you can, still help your teen to feel important, like for their events that they have going on. Maybe just one parent attends, right? Or, maybe you say, hey, tell me everything about the game. I want to know. And so like you take the time to connect afterwards. So there's lots of different ways and options to help teens feel important and connected.
Yeah, and every family's different, and everybody's got their different struggles and challenges, and so you got to find your own way. We're not suggesting that you do things the way we do them. We're just suggesting that you find ways to continue that connection and to acknowledge what's happening for your teen. When especially with a new baby, whether it's through adoption or birth or blended family, like whatever it is, like the babies always seem to get the attention, right?
Yeah.
And so, making sure that we're recognizing milestones and accomplishments and achievements of our teenagers and being there to support them in their hobbies and their extracurricular activities, whatever that looks like for your family, however that works best for your family, could go a long ways to continue building that connection and those relationships.
Yeah. So I feel like another common struggle can be older kiddos maybe resenting the extra responsibility that can be placed on them. And, there's definitely a balance there. So I feel like my parents really did a fairly good job of this. And I was really grateful in having a sibling 10 years younger than me because, while there's nothing to prepare you for parenthood other than becoming a parent, I felt confident going into parenthood because I knew the basics of how to care for a baby. I knew how to change diapers, bottles. I was comfortable. And, that's because my parents, I don't want to say they forced me to be involved. I wanted to be involved, but they did. I was the older child that was heavily relied on in terms of babysitting. But what was equally important is I was never forced to miss out on my activities, right? So if I had a church activity, if I had, any sort of extracurricular school activity, babysitting my younger brother never took precedent over that. So I don't feel like I missed out on any teenage experience because I had to help care for a younger sibling. I think that's a really important boundary and pattern to establish. And that's not to say that you never have your kid help out, right? But, respect the boundaries there and let your kid be a kid.
I love that. Allowing your kid to have their own space and do the things that they want to do can be super important. I remember having a couple of different friends who at some point in their life that, maybe they were the oldest and they have shared with me things like, I ended up having to play the parent role and I felt like I was a parent all the time. And then I would get in trouble for parenting, but I was expected to, consistently be there and watch kids and make sure they're doing their chores and their homework. And that's really not their job. They didn't choose to bring a child into the world. It's really the job of mom and dad. And I love what you said, Liz, that like, of course you can help. And of course they can have responsibilities. And there's a trade-off there, and in our home, Selina and I have a date night every week. And one of the things that we've told our teenagers is like, hey, there's kind of 2 weekend nights that we get in a week, right? Friday night, Saturday night. We get one of those nights. You guys get the other one. And we can adjust that back and forth so you're not missing anything important that you want to be at. Kind of like your parents did, Liz, where, nobody's missing out on anything, but you're also, babysitting or helping take care of whatever needs to go on. And in return, you've got a car to drive and you've got, the insurance to cover you. And there's some benefits that come with doing those things and fulfilling those responsibilities in our home. And of course, that's what works for us, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's not going to work for every family, but that's what works for us. And the last thing I want is my kids feeling like, well, mom and dad had all these kids just so I can take care of them. And now I don't even want to have kids. And I think oldest siblings feel that way no matter what we do sometimes.
It's possible.
And it's just part of it, or even just older siblings, right? So I know it's a challenge, but again, here's where that connection piece becomes really important, where we can connect, have open conversation, understand where our kids are at, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. If we've created a space where they can be open and honest and share with us what's going on, then maybe we can look and see, like, do I need to make an adjustment? Do I need to look at things differently? What experiences are they having, and how can we, help them to have good experiences? And the reality is that if you do some of these things, your kids are still going to be upset. They're going to be annoyed. They don't want to babysit. They don't want to do this. They don't want to help. They don't want you to have any more kids because they don't want to take care of them, whatever it looks like. I think often those kids are going to come back at some stage in life and be grateful for some of those experiences. Probably not all of them, but they're going to be grateful for some of them. I've had every one of my adult children thank me for things that they complained a whole lot about at some point in the adolescent years, but they're grateful for the lessons and the things that they learned through that process. They're just grateful at a later time.
And that applies, I feel like, to every aspect of parenting, because boy, did I hate doing the dishes. And boy, does my 12-year-old dislike doing the dishes, right? And and I think another thing that could be helpful, and this is just something that worked for our family. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for every family, is we kind of started increasing responsibilities before the baby arrived, right? And just, hey, mom's pregnant, she's not feeling good. You guys are going to have a couple extra chores to do to help out around the house. And there's nothing onerous, right? Or nothing like insane where they were losing out on playtime just to do chores. But I think, just again, having that conversation, maybe starting early, can be helpful in having kids adjust to what's coming.
Well, the research in general supports chores and having kids do things and teaching them to work hard. And it's important to teach that balance in life. If we never have our kids do chores and they just get to play all the time, then they don't understand balance. And and we're not going to get into that here, but there's a lot that happens there. And there's a lot of quality and value in doing chores. And so adding a few more when things are going on, that's real life. That's what we do. And it teaches them the value of family and family unity and picking up the slack when it needs to be picked up. And sometimes that happens.
I think it can also help give them a sense of belonging, right? Of I'm important because I am helping out mom. I'm valued and I'm appreciated. And I think that's another thing too that can go a long way is appreciation. I know this is expected of you. Like I know I expect you to do the dishes, but I still appreciate that you do it. And that can go a long way in helping them feel like I'm an important piece of the family dynamic. I'm contributing to the family. And there's got to be more than just like the physical contribution too, right? Like there's obviously got to be that emotional connection, and that's just as important. But participating in just the daily running of the household is going to be good to help kids maintain that sense of belonging. When you add a new member to the household that that will absolutely do nothing except for take time, and because that's all babies do. And so helping, I think it can help give kids a sense of belonging if they're involved in the running of the house, whatever it looks like for your family.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so in closing, I want to just briefly mention postpartum depression and family impact. So, postpartum depression is something I am very passionate about because it's something that I experienced significantly with my first. And it's important to distinguish the difference between postpartum depression and baby blues. After you have a baby, your hormones are completely crazy and out of whack, and it's normal. But what is not normal is, if you have thoughts of hurting yourself or your baby, you feel like you can't get out of bed, you're not bonding with your baby, right? Or if there's any serious struggle going on, that is postpartum depression, and you need to address it immediately, and you need to seek professional help. Do not handle postpartum depression on your own, because one of the biggest contributing factors to postpartum depression that makes it so difficult is the lack of sleep. Lack of sleep will make any mental health issue 10 times worse. And postpartum depression, well, a new baby, lack of sleep is just, it is part of the package. And so if you're experiencing this, and it can happen anyone, any age, any child number, right? Like it doesn't mean like, oh, I had 4 kids and I didn't have any postpartum depression. You could still have it with your 5th. And so it is so important to just be aware of the signs, talk to your doctor, go to your postpartum checkups, and just be aware of postpartum depression.
And husbands and families can be aware as well of the signs
Yes.
and be able to have those conversations. And it is definitely a serious struggle. And while maybe those symptoms aren't normal things, postpartum depression is very normal. It does happen for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But you don't have to wade through that all alone. There is help to be had. And that help can really make a very significant difference in the way you manage yourself and the way you view what's going on in your life. So get that professional help. Make sure that's a part of your life. Make sure you have plans to address potential postpartum depression symptoms prior to a baby coming. Have those conversations with your doctor prior to the baby coming, especially if you're worried about it or if there's a history of it. And like Liz said, yeah, it can happen for any baby at any time. It's not for any baby number, I should say. It's not happening to the baby, but it's not all inclusive. Like you're always going to have it if you had it once, and it's not just because you had it before doesn't mean you're going to have it again. It can happen, but make sure you're getting that help that you need. Dads and siblings can be aware of that. Dads can help, especially teenagers, understand that, look, mom's tired and she has a baby, and that's a lot of responsibility. And so sometimes things are a little bit more challenging. There's hormones that are happening there that are playing a role and affecting what's going on. And having that ability to explain that to the children that are old enough to understand can help them be a little bit more patient and a little bit more understanding with what's happening with mom when that new baby comes.
And kids, older kids and teens, they tend to just internalize everything, and they tend to just make it about them. And so another critical component is this isn't your fault, or it's not anything you have done. It's not because, this isn't because you didn't help out enough in the home or whatever, or because you're not doing enough. This is purely a hormonal and chemical imbalance thing that is specific to mom. And just, I think, giving kids lots of reassurance that, one, it's not their fault. Mom's not going to be this way forever. she's getting treatment, she's getting help, you're safe, you're loved. So doing all those things is going to be really important as well when you have postpartum depression. And if the kid is not handling it well, seeking professional help for them as well, because sometimes no matter how much reassurance you give them, sometimes kids just internalize things and you just can't stop it. And it's not because you're doing anything wrong as a parent, it's because kids just don't have the same comprehension that adults do.
Well, for kids, their world revolves around them.
Yes.
And everything feels like everybody's looking at them and everything's pointing at them. And so, yeah, there's some struggles there, but all in all, again, when we have those connections with our kids, or if we don't, we need to start creating them so that we can better function through those difficult times. When the connections are strong and the hard things come along, like postpartum depression, then we're better able to navigate that with them and increase the connection instead of have it be a source of even deeper tension or contention between parent and teen.
Yeah. Okay. Final takeaways.
Yeah, I think this comes back to what you started with talking about in your parenting moment. Just focus on that relationship and connection and ask the questions, ask them how they're doing, what you can do to help them with this transition, and give them opportunities to learn and grow through it.
Yeah, and I would say right along with what Selina just shared, be patient with your kids and with yourself. These changes are hard. While it might be exciting for mom and dad, there could be a lot of fear and other things going on for a teenager in those changes. And so be patient with them and try and understand and see their point of view. And that could prove to be quite helpful.
Yeah. So for my final thought, I want to end on kind of a lighthearted, funny note that also has to do with the way that, or letting kids process the way they want to. And I see this stark difference in how my 12-year-old versus my 9-year-old is processing this. And I think in general that most of their feelings are excitement. But, my 9-year-old all day, she loves to just kiss and talk to my belly and talk to the new baby. And I love it. And then my 12-year-old will just periodically come up, put her head next to my belly and go, I know where you live. And it makes me laugh every time. And she loves to do it in front of people to get their reaction because, she knows that it's just a comic relief. And maybe I'm not going to sit here and say on some subconscious level she's processing it right negatively. But, again, just let kids express themselves however they're going to express themselves. And, just let them be them in their joy, excitement, or trepidation, whatever it looks like in welcoming a new member to the family. Okay, so next week we are going to get into the influence of grandparents and other adults, and we will see you all then. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.